And welcome back. Hope you had a fun, luxurious, profitable weekend. Most of us haven't had that opportunity for quite some time, especially all of those millions of young Americans, our future, who are carrying around 1.5 at the minimum in what they call student loan debt. It's worse than that. Here's one for you. As you know, we constantly keep our eye open and watch for socialism, Marxism, Leninism, progressivism, socialism, communism on the move. A UCLA professor has said, quote, "We need to seriously question the idea of private home ownership." Can you spell communism? You can use a C or a K. Doesn't matter to me. It's getting to be that bad. And furthermore, if you missed it, California has legally authorized single-family residences in the state to convert their garages into fully legal residential quarters. And, now this is like a 50 by 75 foot lot, and to build an up to 800 square foot freestanding new residential unit. This is on a single-family home lot. Single-family neighborhoods have been earmarked for extermination. You put 3 residences on a single-family home lot, and there goes the neighborhood. You got a slum in no time at all. Cars everywhere, trash, kids. Nothing against kids, but single-family residences are what really made this country the dream for much of the world. But this professor, and I'm sure many others, say, we need to seriously question the idea of private home ownership. All right. Okay. All right. With us this hour, a wonderful human being, a brilliant woman, a friend of mine for a long time, Catherine Austin Fitts, who towers over so much of the world economic analysis that is given to us to cogitate upon. I'm going to stop talking. I'm running out of words. Hi there, Catherine.
Hey, Jeff, how are you?
Well, they always ask me that, and I wonder, do I tell the truth or do I lie?
Well, I don't know. Sometimes it's good to, to create the momentum. One of my favorite quotes from Scripture is, "Faith is the substance of things hoped for, but not yet seen." So
that's good. All right. I have faith. How's that for an answer?
Right. That's good. Yeah.
I have.
Yeah,
faith.
you have a lot of faith because you deal aggressively with some of the most profound risk issues on the planet. I would say it that way.
Well, yes, they are a bit risky. They tried to get me four and a half years ago. They tried to get me.
How'd they try?
Oh, the car crash. You don't know?
Oh, right. I remember.
I'll send you the link. I recreated it in pictures, and it's pretty horrible. I should not be here, or maybe I should. It depends on how you look at it.
Did you feel the sort of the pressure coming that knocked the car? I'm assuming it was a directed energy.
Yeah, I do. It hit me. I was just driving, holding the wheel, doing 60-ish, a little over, on a 2-lane highway, about half a mile from my driveway, and I'm looking at the road, my eyes wide open. It's about 6:25 at night. I'm on the air at 7. At least I was then. Now it's 6. And I blinked, and the next thing I know, I opened my eyes, and I'm looking not at the road anymore. I'm looking at a ceiling. I'm on my back. And it went from there. Anyway, it's a long story, but yeah, no, they do. They kill. Here's what I say, and what I've said for years, and you certainly know this better than I. They kill people all the time. If somebody gets in the way, they kill them. There's no thought about it at all.
It's remarkably
psychopaths.
Common.
Oh God, it's sickening. So how are you, my friend?
I'm good. It's interesting. I spend at this point, a significant amount of time every year in Europe and Asia.
Yeah.
And I got back from Europe on October 31st. It was a very productive trip because last year was the year of Da Vinci, so we were seeing the Da Vinci exhibit at the Louvre, and it was unbelievable. So
how does that translate to returning on Halloween? I don't understand the connection. Just kidding.
It just fell that way. There was no plan. And anyway, so I missed trick or treated in Hickory Valley, but I got back, and it was an amazing transition because if you look at the extent of the unhappiness here and the anger and the meanness, it's so much greater than it was in Europe. And of course, they're struggling enormously.
Yes.
I was in France, for the last week, and you can see how angry the French are and how much they're doing to try and turn things around. So they've done an incredible job of trying to slow things up and turn it back. The same in the Netherlands. You saw when I was in the Netherlands before France. The farmers have just done amazing things, both Germany, Belgium, Netherlands, France, to kind of turn things back. So, but it was the difference in the mood there and here was very noticeable. And ever since I've been here, it's almost as though the U.S. has entered into a very gruesome period. And
grim.
And it's sort of people are being forced out of the middle of the road.
Yes,
so
ma'am.
You're going to be on the side of freedom, or you're going to be on the side of making money at genocide. You got to pick your side. And
making money at genocide. That's an incredibly important expression. Making money at genocide. That's the military-industrial complex. Okay. All right.
Well, it was very interesting. In 1998, I turned to my attorney when I figured out sort of how bad things were. And I said to her, because, all my life, Jeff, all my financings were, at the point that I left, we were doing $500 million, $1 billion deals. So I turned to her and I said, we're going to have to find a way to support ourselves at retail. And she looked at me and she said, good luck, honey. Because I realized you can't work for big governments and big corporations. The financial fraud and corruption has gotten too great. So you're going to have to find a way to support yourself working for individuals. And for people in our background, it was considered to be impossible. That was just impossible. Anyway, so, but it was not an economic decision. I said, look, I'm not going to cross this line. Because they were dropping SWAT teams into poor neighborhoods, rounding up innocent kids just walking down the street, throwing them in the prison, and using that to make money on prison stocks and to, of course, make money on the real estate gentrifying. And they pulled the money on the defender office, so they couldn't get representation, so they had to cop pleas. So they were just filling up the prisons with kids rounded up in these sweeps. It was, the Clintons had these African-American attorneys like Eric Holder working for him who basically helped them engineer all of this. And it's amazing. I just saw a announcement that said the Democrat polling the best with the African American community was Biden. He's the one who passed the legislation. And you look at it, Jeff. And what you say mind control works.
Yeah,
mind control works. Yeah.
I couldn't agree more. I want to go back to what you said there when you came home and you could sense this palpable anger, angst, rage, distrust. This country is emotionally and psychologically in big trouble.
Well, but I think what's happening is that the average person, so I'll use myself as an example, the average person is trying to be productive. We get paid to get up in the morning and to get something productive accomplished, which is useful for somebody else.
Right.
And we're really trying to be productive. And, of course, it's that impulse that then gets worked, gets harvested, gets taken advantage of. And so people are really struggling because they have commitments to their family, to their kids, to their parents, to their job, to their employees, and they're really trying to make things work. And of course, they keep getting played. I call it the modern-day whipping machine. I should tell you about the whipping machine. But anyway, so they're getting very frustrated.
This is a family program, Catherine. Be careful.
Right. Well, they're up against something that at the root is demonic. And
amen to that.
If you don't have the spiritual understanding or tools to see that or realize that, the world seems very illogical. So that's number one. The other thing, in addition to the sort of spiritual demonic forces you're up against all sorts of invisible tactics. And trying to see them clearly and figure out how to navigate them or deal with them, it's a big job. We're right in the middle of a series. We're publishing the last 5 parts in our annual wrap-up that we do every year called Deep State Tactics 101. Mm-hmm. And for the real game of missing money, which was the annual wrap-up the year before, the last piece was going to be a personal history where I described sort of all my, my squabbling with the feds and the Department of Justice and sort of the forces of the central bank. Yeah. And it got too long, and I said, I'll just do it as a different series. Well, one thing led to another. We published 1, and then 2, and then 3, and then 4. And what I discovered is people really wanted to know the day-to-day nuts and bolts tactics of how all these games work. How do covert operations work? So it's almost like taking somebody into Disney World and say, look, let's go downstairs into the underground and see how this is all manipulated and engineered. And so Deep State Tactics tries to do that and show them the different tactics. And it's been very funny because I have all these subscribers saying, that's what happened. I thought that was a coincidence. Oh, it's a strategy. It's a tactic.
No coincidences, hardly any.
And I think there's this dawning realization of, it's like that scene in Rosemary's Baby where she says, oh, this is really happening. And I think people are beginning to realize, we're dealing with some kind of invisible invasion, whether it's, digital technology and the games that come with it, or
the United Nations Refugee Resettlement Program. You wake up one morning and the apartment block down the street is full of people that came from the third world, whatever. We are under invasion. There's no question about it.
Right. Well, we've been under invasion for decades. So
yeah.
I mean, this has been going on. It depends. Some people didn't feel it until 2 years ago. Some people felt it 50 years ago. I mean, I grew up in a very poor neighborhood, and we dealt with it. We dealt with it.
Yeah, me too.
Ago.
That's how we learned. Right. No, we learned. Right. I've been on my own financially since I was 11, and you probably a very similar story.
No. I was spoiled. We grew up in a poor neighborhood, but we weren't poor. I was relatively spoiled, and I saw a lot because of who I was and where I grew up and what my experience was. So, I understood a lot about sort of the covert side of the house. You can't live in a poor neighborhood in West Philadelphia without seeing it operate. But, I didn't have to.
You were a very brilliant child, Catherine. You saw things that your peers probably didn't. You've been cursed with that your whole life. You've got a brilliant mind, and that goes
but I
for
had
children.
access. I had incredible access. So, but there's no doubt that. I think I told you the reason I got so interested in money was I kept watching my neighborhood be destroyed by all these various forces, including the drug, the narcotics trafficking and the mortgage fraud. And I kept asking people, why are we doing this? And they would say, well, it makes money. And what I realized intuitively is the money you're making is less than the equity value that's being destroyed. And so it didn't make any sense to me. Why would you destroy $10 to get $1? Wouldn't it just be better to create $10 and then we'd have more, So what I didn't understand when I started, Jeff, is that to unpack how the money works in one neighborhood, you have to know how the money works in the whole planet. So you can't understand the molecule without understanding the body, and you can't understand the body without understanding the molecule. And, most of the information about how money works is secret. So you have to go through. It's really funny. I went to the firm I went to on Wall Street because they'd let me go from one department to another, to another, to another. I did it at the summer at Goldman Sachs, and then I went to Dillon Reed and kept going to the next department around the firm. And finally I realized, you got to go to Washington. It's all being rigged from Washington. You got to learn the government money side and the central bank.
Let me ask you just a question that really has no easy answer, but you said two parts. One, you made a very important point that mass that used to sit on the fence decided that sitting on a picket fence was not comfortable, and they're getting off one side or the other. You're right. That's Call it polarization, call it whatever you want. That's one. The other statement you made about the crime and corruption in government, I'll throw this out there quasi-rhetorically. Has it gotten worse, or is it just being played out on a different field now?
I would say it's gotten worse. Some of that is just, it's coming to the surface. So some of it is just, there used to be a very neat line between covert and overt. Mm-hmm. And then, it was very funny because the first Bush group tried very hard to keep the lines separate, and then the Clintons came in. They were from a small state, a new generation said, it's too hard. Let's just, they acted on a much more obvious and integrated basis. Uh-huh. But you have, and a lot of this I associate with a massive monetary inflation. But with massive monetary inflation, you have tons of paper being, fiat currency being printed and looking for someplace to go. And so you get a malappropriation and debasement of the currency that then translates into a malappropriation and debasement of all sorts of different economic standards and then cultural standards.
Oh, what a perfect word. I haven't heard that word in a long time. Debasement. That's exactly what's gone on. And it's wall to wall. Wherever you look,
and
it's going on.
It's very difficult, if not impossible, for the debasement of the currency not to translate into debasement of, standards and behavior.
Oh, how about life? Right. How about culture? How about the whole thing? It's all there. Let me ask you now, this issue of the Fed dumping in, what is it, four, almost $5 trillion now in the last couple of months into the markets?
Yeah, we're in a major, ever since September, so...
Trump's booming economy, not quite so booming after all?
Well, if you look at the booming economy is coming from massive fiscal and monetary largesse.
Yes, ma'am.
And, of course, the monetary largesse makes the fiscal largesse possible. Yeah. But remember, and I want to stress this again and again, if you understand anything, you have to understand FASB 56. FASB 56 was instituted by the Trump administration at the end of October with the help of Congress. It was bipartisan, both House and Senate, everybody working together. They implemented FASB 56, which basically says they can run secret books. Now, that's in violation of the Constitution. It's in violation of the financial management laws. But they just decided to just do it on an administrative basis that they all agreed to. Uh-huh. And what that means, Jeff, is whether it's our taxes or the money pouring in through sales of Treasury and other securities, we have no idea where the money is going. You could finance massive amounts of private armies all over the world, and you've got secret books, and you've got waiver powers. The national, the national intelligence director can give waiver to SEC rules to private companies. So when I look at any of the big defense contractors, the big banks, or the federal government financial disclosure, they're meaningless. They mean nothing. Absolutely
meaningless. There could be so many sets of books, you couldn't even count them. We're in over 150 countries with military. Right. Maybe it's 160. I don't know what it is.
Yeah, but how many are we in with mercenaries?
Exactly. It's a continuum. It doesn't matter if they're formally enlisted or in uniform. You've got Blackwater, you've got Greenwater, you've got Deathwater, it's endless, and it goes everywhere. And it goes to the highest bidder.
We've been doing a campaign called My 21 2020, and it's My 21 stands for the 21 trillion of money missing from the federal government, and 2020 stands for the campaign, because I think the 2020 campaign is going to be a very important campaign. The most important office, in fact, is going to be your sheriff, because your sheriff's going to decide under the Constitution who can enforce in your county. So forget the presidential election. Do not worry about that. You need to worry about who your sheriff is. So I don't know if you've been following the Second Amendment sanctuary.
Oh, yes. Oh, you betcha.
So perfect example of why the man you care about or the woman you care about is your sheriff, your county sheriff. So that's number one.
Over 100 counties and cities in Virginia have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuary.
I just got an email from Gun Owners of America. It's up to 418 nationwide. So we now have 418 Second Amendment sanctuaries, and if you go to their website, you can get the documents to help you do one in your town or city or county. And it's
please listen to what excuse me. Please, everyone, listen who are in the U.S. What she just said is so important. Over 400 now counties and cities and communities have declared themselves Second Amendment sanctuaries. There are documents online to help you get started and get your county, your city, your community on that same footing. We've got to do that. We have to fight for our Constitution. Man and man, woman and woman. If we don't do it as individuals, don't for a moment think your government's going to take care of you. Oh, they'll take care of you, all right. Cement boots and a short walk on an even shorter period, and it's gone. You're done. Hold on a minute. We'll be right back. Okay, and welcome back. Talking with Catherine Austin Fitts this first hour tonight. She is an extremely busy human being trying to make a difference, like those of us, and I include all of you listening, who care about what we had and what is being taken away from us. I don't really blame the American people as a mass. They're up against astonishing technology, astonishing amounts of skillful mass mind control and programming. So what we've got to wake those up and help those who got off of the picket fence on our side. We can't let them just languish there. And the material is out there. Get Catherine's brilliant material. Go to her site. Support her. We do our best here. This is not a joke. If we don't move now, they're going to take that Second Amendment away from us. We're going to lose it. And when we lose that, we might as well put the leg irons on. It's going to be over. And I don't want it to be over. Not in my lifetime, not in your children's lifetime, any of you. We have too much here to be proud of, too much to support. Go ahead, Catherine.
So I was telling you about the My 21 2020 campaign.
Yeah.
If you go to Solari.com, it's down on you can see it on the homepage under the big red heart. Or you can also go to missingmoney.solari.com where we have all the documentation on the 21 trillion missing from the government. But every week we do a poster. And that's to help people understand, one, that this is their money, but if we could get the money working properly, there's enough money to solve the problem. So let me just read you some of the posters. The first one is clearly a student. He says, "Dear Mr. President, about my student debt, please deduct it from the 21 trillion. Kind regards." Then the next one is a young woman. She says, "Dear Congresswoman, I don't need a new Green Deal. I'd rather get that 21 trillion back. Kind regards." The next one is an older woman saying, "Dear Governor, in regards to my pension fund, could you please get back our $21 trillion?" Then the next is sort of an older gentleman. "Dear Mr. President, you don't need to raise my taxes. You can use that 21 trillion. Then we've got a black guy saying, "Dear Mayor, I don't need affirmative action. I need that 21 trillion back." I like that one. "Dear Senator Warren" is the next one. "How about you use your Warren's meme team to get the 21 trillion back?" Then the next is a missing money song that Dr. Skidmore's daughter did. Then the next one is a little baby, and it says, "Dear Congresswoman, HUD's is missing $750 billion, but you focus on HUD's transgender policies. Get that money back." Then the next is a homeless vet. It says, "Dear Congressman, with 21 trillion, vets like me could rebuild our country." Then the next is an Antifa. It says, why do you take money from Soros to protest inequality that can be solved by getting the 21 trillion back?" The next is a drag queen who says, "Dear CNN President, do culture wars make your stock go up? Where's the missing 21 trillion? Is it buying your stock instead of building great schools?" The next is a picture of Warren Buffett. "Dear Mr. Buffett, why are you buying treasury bonds when the government is running secret books and 21 trillion is missing? Real creditors get the money back." Then last week's you're going to really like, Jeff. It says, "Dear Mr. Gates, why don't you eat this hormone-infested biowarfare burger yourself and use your Jedi contract and Windows backdoors to get back our 21 trillion? Sincerely yours, a man who wants to stay a man." That's in reference to
That's good. That's good.
The Impossible Burger at Burger King is alleged by a doctor from South Dakota to have 18 million times more estrogen.
Yes.
Okay, so this is this week's, and it's
That's
a
no
picture
accident,
of
by the way.
Oh, I'm sure.
Know.
Well, that's enough to be hormone replacement therapy.
You bet it is. Yeah.
I know. Okay, so the next one is a picture of a bathtub with no water coming out of the spigot and a little rubber duck on the bathtub. It says, "Fellow citizens of Flint, Michigan, let's assert a common law right of offset up to $65,000 per person to fund a safe water system. Just do it, thirsty taxpayer." Okay, so what I wanted to talk about with you tonight was what is a common law right of offset?
Okay, can we hold on. Can you hold that for just 2 minutes? I want to do something real quick. Because you said something that was so important earlier, and it sounded to some of you like she was just throwing it off tongue in cheek. No, it doesn't matter who's in the White House. Don't worry about it. Worry about your local community, your town, your city, your county sheriff. Find your county sheriff candidate and support him. It doesn't matter who's in the White House. I've been saying that for a long time. The leash on the president is getting, yes, you have. The leash on the president is getting shorter and shorter. They're just a diversion. Please, it wouldn't matter if Hillary was in there or Trump. It doesn't matter ananymore.
Right, but I think there's something very important to understand, Jeff, and that's, I keep bringing up the red button problem. But to date, the American people do not want to support the president in pushing the red button because they want their check. And if we have a economic model that depends on running around the world stealing from other people, and we want subsidy in our individual, incomes, and if you look at our personal financial statements, if a lot of people have been making money from this game, and the military-industrial complex has done a very good job of spreading around the money around in certain ways, and people are financially dependent. So, the American people have said, they want the corruption to end, but when it comes to pushing the button and changing the cash flow so that you can really do that, they will not support whoever is in the White House. So you're putting, whoever you put in the White House, you're putting them in a double bind. Now, if you and I were going to push the red button and say, okay, we really are going to stop all this corruption, you have to re-engineer the cash flows at high speed, one county at a time. Because what you're going to do in Tulsa is totally different than what you're going to do in Anchorage, Alaska, which is totally different than what you're going to do in Brooklyn. And if you're going to optimize money like it was real money instead of just printed malappropriated capital, then facts matter, productivity matters. You have to get real bottom up and real specific real fast. So it's not a one model fits all. You can't do it from Washington. I mean, yes, could I sit in the middle of Washington and dictate out a group of rules that would make it easier for communities to do this? It's got to come bottom up.
Yeah.
The president cannot do this, particularly if if our number one political driver is we want a bigger check next year.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So.
Thank you. I just wanted to make you made that point so eloquent. It's got to start with each and every one of you at your local level, and before that, within you and your lives and how you live your lives. Go ahead.
Okay, so let me talk about the nuts and bolts. One of the many challenges of doing it at the local level is, I used to have a pastor say, if we can face it, God can fix it. What has to be faced as to how we got where we are and the reasons we got where we are is a very ugly picture. People don't want to face it. Because I'm not talking about facing anything outside of your county. I'm talking about what's been going on in your county for the last 50 years. So I'll just make a prediction. If 98% of American men watched porn in the last 6 to 12 months, how many of those men, Jeff, did it on a government computer or on a corporate computer where they can lose their job, number one, or it can be used against them, or they were entrained into getting into kiddie poor where somebody's got them on a criminal offense, a.k.a. they have a control file. So that's only one tactic to get a control file. The other is, the NSA just listens and catches you, doing something that's a felony. So if we look at all the parents who are being prosecuted by the Department of Justice, they were they were engaging in felonies on the telephone while the NSA was recording them. So since the NSA, as we know, has been recording everything and everybody for quite some time, how many of the men in America do you think have a control file, whether through porn or being recorded by the NSA or, entrapment, financial fraud, not paying, having money in Switzerland, not paying their taxes?
It's a very high percentage.
It's I would
say, let me say, I'm going to go with 85%.
Okay. So in your county, let's say that 85% of the men have control files. And let's say of their wives or the women in their life or the significant other partner in their life, how many of those partners know they have a control file?
I have to push that around in my head for a while. Tell me.
Very few, right? Maybe 10%?
Yeah, I wouldn't think many at all. Yeah.
Small.
Yeah.
Okay. Now, that's a big secret in every family, right?
Interesting.
Yeah. So you're going to have to break the trance on all of that, because if you look at the drug running, if you look at the arson, if you look at the illegal activities, the poisoning, the murders, most of that is not done by somebody from Langley, Virginia. Most of that is done by a local stringer in your county. It's done by your neighbors.
Yep.
Yeah, it's done by somebody in your family. It's done by, all this stuff, there's a local component. And you can't turn it around unless you can face it and deal with that. So how do you protect? Let's say 85% of the men turn out to be, 20,000 men. Let's say you're in a small county. Uh-huh. So how are you going to help, 20,000 men get free of that leash? Because you've got to find a way to get them free of that leash.
I couldn't even begin to think of how that would be done.
It could be done.
Yes, but it's so insidious the way it's all coordinated. People are fear-driven. They're fear-based. And
Absolutely.
It's all done by that.
Absolutely. But something, the power of transparency. If you look, one of my favorite books is The Evolution of Cooperation by Robert Axelrod. And one of the things he was able to prove is that the human race will shun people who play dirty if they can see it. So if they can understand that the Clintons are running around the world or their syndicate killing people, they will shun them. But they've got to be able to see it. That's why transparency is so important. But to get to transparency, to turn on, we're all running around in the dark trying to make things go and trying to make things work. So if you look at a lot of people, how they get the control file, they got the control file because they felt like they had to do what they did because they didn't want their kid to have the kind of car accident you had. Do you know what I mean? They were scared. Yeah. And so
it's
one thing leads to
all of it.
Right.
Yes.
Well, no, it's greed-based too. A lot of people end up with control files through greed.
Well, that drives the fear paradigm, of course.
Right.
That's what's underlying it.
And the entrainment is unbelievably important. The entrainment is unbelievably important, and it's interesting because I had a wonderful colleague who we have a great Solari report on entrainment technology because when I started to be an investment advisor helping individuals, one of the things I discovered was entrainment was being used to really defraud all sorts of people in a variety of different ways. And, my attitude is it's your money. You should be able to do whatever you want. But occasionally I would find myself having just knockdown, drag-out fights with people because they had a 100% chance of losing money and they didn't realize they were being worked with entrainment. And, I was up against an entrainment machinery. So I talked Adam Trombley into doing a great interview on entrainment. Anyway, so I got this colleague of mine to read it and listen to it, and I called him back a week, and he was in a very bad mood. I said, "What's the matter?" He says, I had this relative buy a really expensive car they can't afford, and I'm really upset about it because I'm kind of the lender of last resort in our family." And I said, "Well, did you warn them about entrainment?" It turned out they bought it online. He said, "No, I don't involve them in that kind of conspiracy stuff." I said, "Well, this is your fault."
Conspiracy stuff?
This is not conspiracy stuff. They just got tricked into buying a car they couldn't afford because they're online and they got hooked, whether it's porn or gambling or shopping or, it's all there. And there was a long silence, and that's when he said to me, he said, I'm working to help some people get free of a porn addiction. Do you think they're using this technology? I said, of course they are. They want control files. How do you steal $21 trillion from the Department of Defense? You get a control file on everybody in all those IT systems, whether it's the DoD employees or the contractors.
The average individual could never imagine the amount of control that is being wielded upon all of us as a society.
I can imagine. I can imagine. You know why?
You can, but the average person can't.
Yeah, but when I started litigating, when I went through it, so I went through an 11-year litigation process. Okay?
I know.
I had 18 audits and investigations, 12 tracks of litigation, a smear campaign, and physical harassment.
I don't know how you survived. So, I don't understand it. You're amazing. I mean that.
Jeff, it's very simple. You have to go forward or back. So for me, there was no back. You know, I burned my boats. I had to go forward.
Yeah, you don't have reverse in your transmission. I understand.
Well, I mean, who wants to reverse into a swamp? That's not a plan. Anyway, but I kept thinking, you know, I'm a great believer there's a path. You just have to find it. When I discovered how many people in my family, my friends, my business, who essentially had control files, I was stunned. It took me years to believe this, you know, sort of how the control was engineered. We did a great wrap-up called Control 101 where I just laid it out because I was getting so frustrated with people. You know, you get these people say, well, we'll go talk to the congressman. I said, wait a minute. We need to know who has this control file before we could talk to him.
How did you unearth this data? It wasn't FOIA. You just talked to people? You got shown into
you're
areas
in all these different situations. So you're constantly in situations. You're working. And it was very interesting. I don't know if you ever heard about the Kemp tapes. Did I ever tell you the story of the Kemp tapes?
No.
So one of the attorneys, I had some attorneys who I believed were working for the other side, but they asked me if I would record all my recollections of working in the Kemp tapes, in the Bush administration. And I found out later that what happened was basically the project managers, probably over at the CIA, said, well, we can't frame her for anything she did in her business, but we control the administration, so let's frame her for something she did when she was Assistant Secretary of Housing. Anyway, so I recorded 6 90-minute cassettes, blah, 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 explaining the whole thing. Yeah. And one guy in my office said, could I listen to that? And I said, ooh, why would you want to listen to that? I just done it for the attorneys. Anyway, he started to listen to it. He came back. He said, that's fascinating. This was before West Wing. So he said, can I give this out to so-and-so? Well, one thing led to another, and we ended up making hundreds of tapes. Finally, it was just too hard to make all the cassettes, so we put it up on the Internet came along, and we put it up on the Internet. Anyway, but what happened was all these people who had worked for the intelligence agencies doing mortgage fraud then started to contact me or call me up, and they started explaining to me, oh, that was this, and this was that, and that was this. And it's just like the movie Enemy of the State. To figure out what's going on and turn it around, you have to find Gene Hackman. So it took a long time, but all these Gene Hackmans started showing up and saying, you got to read this, you got to read that, you got to listen to this documentary.
Yeah,
and so,
I can
you get this, right, you get this enormous education about the covert side of life.
I was just reading a story I ran the other day about the epidemic of federal employees watching porn on the job. And they'll watch it 2 to 6 hours a day on the job, a lot of them. And some are now watching kiddie porn on the job from a government computer.
That's how you get them. That's how you get them.
Oh, instantaneously.
Right, but I think a lot of it they're using entrainment. So,
well, you know why? Okay, hold on. This is true. You mentioned the car thing. I don't watch commercial television. I happen to watch a little bit of it recently. The car commercials now show you these new cars. I don't care what model it is. They do not ever mention the price of the vehicle. They only mention nothing down or $20 down and your monthly payment. That's all they mention. And they make it sound reachable and grabbable, and you are entrained. You don't even think about the $70,000 for the four-wheel drive pickup you're going to buy and drive to Walmart and back.
Well, but here's the thing. If you look at what they're doing in lending and loans, that used to be illegal. If you look at what they're doing with, what you're describing, things like that used to be either illegal or you'd be shunned if you did them.
Yes.
So if you take all these different practices, we're basically we're using very sophisticated technology to really entrap you. It's entrapment.
Absolutely.
It's entrapment, and it shouldn't be legal. But even if it is legal, if a company or business is doing that, you shouldn't. If you sit down next to them at the dinner, you ought to just look at them and say with disgust, "Ew, I don't want to sit next to you," and get up and leave. So, shunning really works. Shunning is one of the most effective political tactics. But people are doing this because they think,
that's interesting. I hadn't thought of that. Yeah, go ahead.
I have to tell you one story. I was at a Christian revival in, when was it? It was 99 or 2000.
Yeah.
It was before the 2000 election, and it was T.D. Jakes in the Atlanta Dome. And I was there with my minister and my church. And you had 100,000 African American women in the Georgia Dome, and more coming in by internet. And so T.D. Jakes brings in George W. Bush, who's running against Gore, in by monitor to greet the audience. And 100,000 African American women get up, screaming and cheering for George W. Bush. So after it was over, I turned to my minister and I said, I just risked my life and my fortune to try and bring transparency to Bush and Clinton family, narcotics trafficking, and, all sorts of corruption. And I'm risking my life, and you just got up and cheered for George W. Bush. Now, she used to work at the DEA, so there was nothing about this kind of stuff she didn't know. And she said, well, he's going to be the winner. And I said, so he's the winner and I'm the loser? And she said, yes, that's right. So in America, for many, for my whole life, the standard practice is you go with the winner. And this gets back to the red button. This gets back to the red button problem.
Oh, yeah. No red button for most people. Right. By the way, A.G. Barr, I don't remember his name back in MENA. He had a different name. He was a player with the Clintons at MENA. I think it was something like Robert Stevens. This guy goes way back.
He came with Terry Reid. Said he came with
Terry
Bush.
Reid. Used to have Terry on. Yes.
Well, I hate to say this. I don't mean to be morbid. So now I will get morbid. I can say one really morbid thing, right, Jeff?
Got it.
Barr went in with Bush. Bush went into the CIA to clean out the Church Commission. So they fired Colby. And then Rumsfeld and Cheney, who were in the White House, and Rumsfeld was chief of staff, turned it over to Cheney, went over to DOD, so they engineered Bush into the CIA. And seven days later, my mother was dead. And if you go, I have an article I published in 2004 called Meditations at the Crossroads, where I tell the story of, why I believe she was assassinated and the relationship between, at that time and her death. So, Barr was the young guy who went back to the CIA with Bush. He'd been there before, I believe.
Yeah.
So read Meditations at the Crossroads. So, Barr has a long... It's funny, I don't know if... He gave a great speech at Notre Dame where he expressed his frustration with the extraordinary corruption. And,
funny how they can do that sometimes. It's weird.
Well, I think he was sincere because... go back to the Bush. In those days, you had a very neat line between the covert and the overt, and the majority of the people in the overt world ran around and behaved in, remarkably ethical, reasonable, decent ways. And the feeling was, okay, well, we can do all this covert stuff, and the overt world won't change. Of course, now it's integrated, and it's what Bill Moyer said. Once you think that anything goes, anything can come back to bite you. But I don't think Barr, I think Barr was sincere. I don't think he necessarily connects the dots between what was happening at MENA or, the assassinations after the Church Commission, with the Church general
died of
corruption
a strange kind of cancer, too, as I remember.
Well, Church made the mistake. They talked him into running for president, so he shut down the commission.
Oh, that's right.
And then, of course, his campaign went no place. Right.
That's right. We're almost out of time. In fact, there's the music. Go visit Catherine. Say hello to Catherine at the Solari Report, Solari, Solari Report. Solari.com is the website. Solari.com. Go read the reports. Thank you, friend. Good to talk to you
Jeff,
again.
you're
as
a
always.
prince. Thank you so much for everything.
Oh, my pleasure. Wouldn't do it any other way. Neither would you. You be well. Okay.
Bye.
Be safe. Okay. Catherine Austin Fitz.